Okay, so the next team we are going to be talking about is the Orlando Magic. They
Yep.
finished 34 and 48 last year, so just kind of one spot ahead of the Charlotte Hornets. They were the 26th ranked offense. That is very bad. There are 30 teams in the NBA, and the 16th ranked defense, which is really good for a young team. Like they
Yeah.
definitely showed some defensive potential, and they're going to want to build on that defensive potential this year because this is a team. This is a team that I would have picked a lot higher. Like I think the talent level of their young core is really high, like almost as high as there currently is in this league. Um,
Mm.
but the like we'll get like let's go into their transactions, but I definitely want to talk about like the shooting on this roster could make this a very bumpy ride this year, and that's the only reason for me at least that I was held back from putting them a lot higher in the projected standings.
Yeah, I really wanted to see the Magic take a big step forward, and depending on how their offseason went, which I'll talk about right now, they drafted Anthony Black, number 6 overall, future lead guard, and maybe not this season, but that's I think why you pick him that high. And they drafted Jet Howard out of Michigan, number 11 overall, kind of a surprise. They
Mm-hmm.
also signed Joe Ingles to a fake 2-year deal for a lot of money, but they had to use the cap space, and the second year is non-guaranteed. And they re-signed Franz Wagner's older brother, Mo Wagner, to a 4-year deal, I think. Maybe it was a 3-year deal. Anyway, he's back on the team.
Keep the family together.
Yeah.
And did
No,
they
I
pick up?
think it's cool that both of the brothers are good. I mean, they kind of signed. They picked up Mo Wagner on kind of a flyer. Like it hadn't really worked out for him in the NBA so far, but like being with his brother just like rejuvenated him, and he's a solid backup center now.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And if that shooting can perk up a little bit, he might be the kind of player that they need to put on the floor a little bit more to unlock things, kind of thing. But but they're actually they're shooting from the center position is not their problem. It's their
No,
shooting
it's everywhere
everywhere
else.
else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to, like I said, I really wanted to be in on the Magic this year, but the problem is just it's that guard rotation and it's those wings, and like you said, it's the offense. I mean, they have playmaking, and they have lots of guys who are, potential rim attackers, but what they don't have is they don't have a lot of guys to kick it out to for knocking down open shots. You know, we'll see what the rotation ends up looking like, but it's probably going to be Markel Fultz. And I'm assuming Anthony Black comes off the bench for this first year or two at least.
Or they start both in the backcourt.
Or
That's
they,
also
well, that
possible.
that would be rough shooting wise.
Well, they're already showing no, like they don't care about shooting at all. So you feel like they're at least going to try it.
I think they got to plug Gary Harris in there at the 2, at least to start things off with, just because it's a veteran who has a somewhat competent ability to space the floor.
Well, they
And
got
then I'm
Gary
sure
Harris. They
Jalen
also got,
Suggs will get some
yeah.
run, but he's not much of a shooter, although much improved. You can't be worse as a guard shooting the 3-point, shooting the 3-pointer as a rookie than Jalen Suggs and also Markel Fultz were in their respective rookie seasons. But both of them have gotten better from the absolute bottom. Like neither of them are good shooters, but at least they're not the worst.
Well, let's who do you make a hot prediction of who's going to have the best shooting season out of Markel Fultz, Jalen Suggs, and Anthony Black?
I'm actually going to go with Jalen Suggs here.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I mean, I think he has the worst natural touch out of the three. That's the only thing that holds me back
No,
from.
no, I disagree. I
Who's
mean,
who's got worse touch then?
okay, his at rim finishing is not great. I'll be the first to admit that, but I think a lot of that is maybe less touch and more just like over enthusiasm. I mean, like he attacks the rim with like such intensity, and I think it like kind of surprises him. Like the amount of contact he receives when he gets there, or the amount of contact he does not receive.
Yeah.
Like he's expecting like a certain way of things of like working out, and that's often not how it plays out in the NBA. He does struggle to finish at the rim. Like I'll be the first to admit that. But I think he has just like a really solid, easily repeatable set shot. Like I like his form in terms of a guy who's not a great shooter. Like this is kind of how you build a jump shot.
I think I do. I can't imagine a world in which I can imagine a world where Jalen Suggs has the best 3-point percentage of those three, but it's still like clearly the worst shooter. Like, I mean, Markel Fultz, he's got a broken outside jumper. He's still clearly never got over that thoracic outlet syndrome or whatever. The shot is still, his release is too low, and you can tell that
Yeah,
hurts him. But he's got great touch from everywhere else. He's just like,
yeah,
he even on long twos, he comes off screens and can fire.
yeah,
Really really nice floater game. And then Anthony Black, his shot looks even worse than Jalen Suggs. His shot is like well, at least like we'll see what it looks like when the season
yeah.
starts.
He'll probably rebuild it, or he should at least.
But I thought he showed really fantastic touch on drives. He'd have these
Hmm.
kind of like scoop and hooks where he wouldn't even get all the way to the rim, and he still just get a way to kind of like kiss it softly off the glass and stuff. Like, to
Hmm.
me, Anthony Black's long term potential, and why I didn't mind seeing him go higher than maybe some people had him, was just like the touch is clearly there, and that's an easier place to build a jump shot from
Yeah,
than just sort of like correcting form. Jalen Suggs is concerning. Jalen Suggs looks like he's totally out of control a lot of the time. Though
yeah.
I've
No,
always compared.
I project Jalen Suggs shooting like 37% from three on like 2.5 attempts per game, and almost all of them are just wide open in the corner where he has like 3 seconds to think about it. You know?
Yeah, fair enough. That's the thing. Like, their three most important guards, Fultz, Suggs, and Black, are all have different bad shooting questions. And like you said with Gary Harris, and I think we should also like the other kind of, they do have shooting on this roster, but it's all
Hmm.
players that ideally you'd like to be further down in their rotation. And like you said, like maybe they have to start Gary Harris, but they also have Cole Anthony on the roster, who shot selection wise, like his percentages have not looked great, but I think it's because of that shot selection where like he's clearly a better shooter than
Yeah.
all the other guys we've mentioned. They also have Caleb Houston on the roster. Jet Howard wouldn't quite call a guard, but is another, like, I feel there's a really good opportunity for Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, Jet Howard, Caleb Houston, to some extent Joe Ingles, to be like, oh, we kind of unfortunately need you on the floor all the time
Mm.
because like
You know,
we need like to
I
make
think
these.
Caleb Houston is clearly a good shooter. I
Yeah,
think he's displayed that. Whether he's ready to do much of anything else is more the question, but maybe they just need that skill so badly. He gets some run this season. And then also, I mean, I've kind of come around a little bit on Jet Howard as their draft pick. Like, both of us were very surprised when he was taken number 11 overall. Both of us saw Grady Dick as the better, you know, if you just need spacing, like just take Grady Dick over Jet Howard. But Jet Howard's he's really shifty. Like,
yeah, I
he's
agree.
really good at like kind of weaving into the defense and finding these little openings. And talk about a guy with great touch. I mean, you probably don't love it if a rookie is like taking pull up mid range jumpers all the time, but like he has that skill. Um,
He's always been an underrated passer. Anyone who is high on him in the draft, and Jet Howard had some serious fans in the draft.
mhm.
Um, and anytime I was like, watching video breakdown by a scout that liked him, or reading articles about someone who was high on him, they all wanted to point out that he's like got sneaky good passing skills, like that he's
Yeah,
he's a smart player with a little bit of like more creation chops than you think if you think of him as just kind of a pure gunner type. He's not that. He's got a little bit more to his game. The things I didn't really like about Jet Howard were more on the physical side of things. Like, I didn't love the way the body looked or how he moved a lot of the time.
yeah.
I'm a little worried about that at NBA
Both of us
level.
kind of criticize the frame because we're like, he's really skinny. He does not have very broad shoulders. He seems to have a poor center of gravity. Like, how is this guy going to guard big wings? And then I
How do you
just,
how do you trust the t-shirt guys out of college? Like, t-shirt guys
yeah.
is always a red flag. I'm like, what are you hiding?
Well, I mean, but then I started to think of him like, what if he's not a wing? What if he's just a really big guard? Like, it's the Magic. All of their positions are oversized, right?
Yeah.
Every you got to think of every player as like 2 to 3 inches taller than a typical player at that position. So, like, what if he's just a shooting guard and then on some nights kind of a smaller wing? And then I don't mind his physical limitations as much.
I still hate the defense no matter what position they're putting Jet Howard at. Either he's got some big defensive questions asked
Yeah.
from me, which is like, I wasn't like Paolo is not a good defender yet either, so that's a little bit concerning. I really like Wendell Carter Jr. and Franz Wagner's defense, and Anthony Black was like amazing. But if you're telling me that like the lineup ends up being like Anthony Black and Jet Howard in the backcourt with Wagner, Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr., and because Jet Howard has in his rookie season proved to be able to handle some bigger minutes, I think that would be a pretty exciting thing for the Magic. Someone is going to have a big opportunity to unlock these lineups just because they can shoot. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jet, go get it. If Joe Ingles is getting more minutes than you by midseason, that's going to be a bad rookie season for Jet Howard. But it's not. I don't like to die on the hill of a player's rookie season. So I'm
Yeah.
not.
Well, we still haven't really touched on Franz and Paolo that
Yeah,
much.
yeah. We don't like talking about
The
the
good
good
players.
players.
I mean, both of these guys are obviously huge talents. I think and I hope they're both future All Stars.
Oh,
Maybe
they're
maybe
my
not in the
favorite
distant
young
future.
duo.
Yeah, I mean they're both really good. Like the Magic are set at the 3 and 4, in perpetuity.
Or whatever position they need to put these guys in any kinds of lineups. Like
Yeah,
I can picture this duo at the 2-3, at the 3-4, at the 4-5, in like all kinds. I mean, I'm not saying you'd want to start either of them at the 5 if you want like defense, but I'm like looking forward to the future in a playoff setting. This duo just gives them the ability to shift, to toggle up and down, as long as you have the smaller and the bigger players to make those lineups work or whatever, like,
yeah,
and that's really exciting. I think a lot of people who didn't watch the Magic kind of misunderstand what Franz is. Like a lot of people like, oh, he needs to play the 4, like they've got a weird positional glut. I'm like, you watch him
no,
play, he's like on defense seems to do better against 2s than 5s. Like he really likes to move his feet and be disruptive on the perimeter.
yeah,
He's actually a little less well suited to kind of like backline stuff and rim protection. And then he's dynamite off the dribble. He loves taking step backs. He loves to pump and drive. Like he's more of a 2-3 than a 3-4, which I think is so
hmm
surprising for anyone that watched him at Michigan, where it just looked like he was going to be a defensive role player with some like maybe interesting like offensive role player skills kind of thing. So
yeah. But I feel like defense a lot of times defines your position more so than offense.
I agree, but I think on
And
both ends he's got the skill set to like play a lot more too than people realize.
yeah,
And if his shot could like go from average too strong, that would, and I think he's maybe the most likely candidate out of some of the guys we're talking about. Like Franz shot 36% from 3 last year. Like if he just bumped that up to 38, we'd be looking at a very different situation
oh yeah.
in Orlando.
Well, I mean, I feel like poor spacing in general lowers everyone's ceiling on shooting a little bit.
It is such a swing thing for a team season when they have this collection of like average, slightly below average shooters, and you're wondering like, well, if everyone just kind of like, if 3 of these guys have good shooting seasons, that is going to be such a difference between if like 2 of these guys have bad shooting seasons. And I
Yeah,
think the best example of this was like just remembering back to projecting teams last year and looking at the New York Knicks and the Toronto Raptors, both teams that were like, well, there's a lot of guys here who are like 35-36% shooters that could maybe like go off this year and have a hot shooting year, or do the opposite and like slide back down to being just kind of like having a really poor shooting year. And like what happened, the New York Knicks had a good shooting year where lots of those players
hmm
popped, and they got to the second round of the playoffs, and like they were the 5th seed. And the Raptors had a nightmare shooting season and didn't even make the playoffs. Like got eliminated in the play-in. So like that's where I see like the Magic right now. Like the biggest swing here is just like, do 2 of these random players we're talking about pop off and shoot 38 percent on 5 or 6 attempts, or does this team have a really mucky shooting season and everyone looks a little bit worse and a little bit less efficient because the offense is so bogged down by it? And that's what I see when I look at the Magic. And this offense right now, like it just looks like 5 dudes all operating a battering ram together. Like
yeah,
they got no archers, so they're just like at the gate, just taking damage and trying to bash it in. And some nights they will crush teams with their size, and some nights it will be just so ugly. Markel Fultz tries to get to the rim, and Anthony Black tries to get to the rim, and Paolo tries to get to the rim, and it's just like there's very little balancing potential on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately to wrap things up here with the Magic, you know, yet again, this is like one of those super young teams where, like we're saying, if things kind of come off on the plus side of their potential range of outcomes with shooting, like this could be a team that absolutely makes the play in, gets a playoff spot this year. Like they have that in them, but it's also very easy to see a world in which they're still a little bit too young. They still haven't quite figured out the spacing and the offensive flow. Anthony Black isn't ready, and this is another season where they finish just on the outside looking in.
Yeah. I mean, this is a future playoff team that is going to be a big problem when they get there, especially if I think Paolo's development more than anything else is the really important thing to watch here, because he
Yeah.
showed so much as a rookie in terms of just being able to physically dominate and get to the rim. But other parts of his game were a little disappointing. The shooting, I'd say, people were optimistic about his shooting. Like it wasn't great in college, but it was like it didn't look great. I also thought the playmaking was a little bit underwhelming. He won Rookie of the Year, and everyone's like pro Paolo, but there's still
Mhm.
some dangerous holes in his game, and I need to see some progress on those. He's playing for Team USA right now, and they're using him as a backup five right now, which I think is like
Yeah.
kind of interesting, and could be a way to unlock more shooting for the Magic this year. But like if he takes another step forward as a shooter or a playmaker, that's another big like swing part of the Magic outside their shooting. But this could be a yucky year, could be a really awful offensive year, but I think the defense is going to take another step forward.
Yeah. He beat out Cade for that last spot on the USA roster. I know a lot of Pistons fans weren't happy about that.
Well, the with Cade though, like he's like at least you never know what these things are actually like. But he said he didn't. He said he turned down a spot.
Yeah.
And how is that the last spot? Who else is on that roster? That can't be the last one.
I mean, it's mostly good players. Like we don't have a lot of the superstars, but like it's mostly like guys who are in their fifth or sixth season and are starting to, really reach their stride.
And I think that's what Team USA always should be. Like I don't know when people are just like when people want like
Yeah,
Kevin Durant
we
to show
shouldn't
up to
have
play,
like
I'm like,
second year players.
or
Oh,
and also
you're
shouldn't have like
going
yeah
you're
like
going like late career guys. Yeah, no, I agree.
um
No,
get these.
Anthony Edwards should be the face of Team USA. No,
Yeah,
I'm here for
that's
that.
perfect.
Yeah.
And that kind of player, Michael Bridges, like Jaren Jackson Jr., those are the exact people that Tyrese Halliburton, young like guys entering their prime, that are still huge stars. But I get, NBA fans, Americans want to see the biggest possible names. Like, where's LeBron James at? Like, he's getting he's in the ice bath.
Yeah.
He's spending $1 million on his body right
Yeah.
now.
He's got a long way to go to prepare for next season.
It's true.
Um,
It's true.
yeah. All right. Let's move on.